What's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk here with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass, a podcast for the agency owner that wants to own their agency and not be owned by their agency. I know you guys know what we're talking about. On today's episode, we have an amazing guest. We're going to talk about, should you create an agency that is owned by all of your employees? So let's go ahead and jump into the show. Hey, Leanne, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason, nice to see you.
Yeah, excited to have you on. So tell us who you are and what do you do?
So I'm Leeann Leahy. I am, as I said, a recovering New Yorker because I run an agency out of Portland, Maine called VIA, and I'm the CEO for the last 8 or so years.
Awesome. And how did you get into the agency life?
Oh, dare I say I kind of grew up with it. I actually was a child actress when I was little. So my first commercial was at 6 months old on the other side of the camera. And I've sort of grown up around advertising and swore it off, said I wasn't going to do it, and then fell right into it when account planning was sort of new in the States, which I guess dates me a little bit. But and so I was an account planner growing up and worked at agencies large and small, mostly in New York. And then 10 years ago, had the privilege of relocating to VIA in Portland, Maine. And I feel like I won the lottery. I say it all the time because um, on the one hand, I get to live and work in Portland, Maine. And on the other hand, I am at an agency that's recognized nationally, has twice been named Small Agency of the Year, is really, we emphasize fun and we get to work on all the best brands there are. So honestly, my professional challenges are as great as they've ever been, if not more so. So it's been exciting.
Very awesome. Well, let's go ahead and jump into it and talk about employee-owned agencies. Now, you guys were founded by a number, I think, 3 individuals. And a couple of years ago, you guys actually transitioned to, employee-owned. So why would someone listening want to do this? What's the benefit? Tell us all that good stuff.
So, yeah, I mean, it's been a multi-step process for us. So we were founded by, as you say, 3 people. There were 4, but the 4th one only lasted for a couple of weeks. So we're going to call it 3 people.
There's always that
who
one.
had a vision. I know, right? But they had a vision to create something that was bigger than any of them. They very intentionally named the agency VIA, which stands for Vision, Instinct, Action. They didn't name it after themselves because they wanted to create something that was bigger than just the personalities. And for now, the past 30 years, we're turning 30 in February, so it's very exciting, planning a big party. Over the years, the first founder left maybe 5 or 6 years in, the second one left, 12 or 13 years in, and the last founder left. He hasn't left completely. He's still very involved, but he stepped back from the day-to-day business just about 8 years ago when I was made CEO. And at that moment, as you can imagine, we were twice Small Agency of the Year. We have lots of awards for best culture. We have Fortune, 100 clients. And so we get a lot of people asking us if we're interested in an exit and what we'd like to sell. And so we've entertained and had a lot of those conversations, but none of them really felt right. And so about 8 years ago, John Coleman, our founder, who remains with us, came up with a program by which he, all right, are you sitting still, would gift the agency to the employees. Now, this was not a typical employee ownership program. It was completely bespoke. The lawyers and the accountants thought we were bonkers. Turns out they were right. But we started a process by which every year, assuming we hit certain metrics that were financial, creative, sort of via health and how we were living up to our values and principles, and we would measure ourselves each year. And if we hit our metrics, John would gift in the form of options a portion of his ownership back to the employees. And so we did that for 7 years, and we were meant to do it for 10 years. And I had certain preferences that we were going to hit. One of them was buying out a small group of outside investors. And in year 7, we were fortunate enough to hit all of our metrics and buy out all of our preferences. So we suddenly found ourselves at a moment where we could convert those options that everyone had been earning for 7 years into shares. And here's where the accountants and the lawyers were right. It turns out that our wonderful program we call VEEP, the VIA Employee Equity Program, had all the best intentions and was 100% beautiful in the way that it was structured to create really generational employment, where there's an employee base that passes to the next employee base, and so on and so on. The one thing that we didn't really calculate completely, and we knew it was a problem, we kind of kicked it down the curb, was the tax implications. And the problem was that the conversion from options to shares was prohibitively expensive because of the tax implication, because of the growth we'd had over those years and the increase in value of the shares. And so as a result, we reevaluated what we really wanted to do with the same goals in mind. We still want to have what we call generational employment, obviously not generational within the same family, but we'd like to have long-term employment for a wide economic base in Portland. We would like to be able to allow people who build the agency to benefit from it instead of just a few people. And we would very much like to create, personal wealth for the many instead of the few. So we took another look at different structures. We looked at letting someone buy us, but that really only creates a benefit for the few. And it gives up our independence, which we cherish. We looked at things like deferred compensation and profit sharing and all these very technological terms that I learned far too much about. And what we landed on was an ESOP. An ESOP is an employee stock owned program. It's overseen by the government, so it has huge tax benefits to the employer and indeed the way we structured it to the employee. And it's effectively set up as a qualified retirement plan. But what it means is that we bought the agency from the remaining founder. And now everyone in the agency, every year, as we kind of continue to increase our valuation, is given more shares and at no cost to themselves or very, very minimal tax cost. And then that grows over time. And when they leave the agency, they have something that they can roll over into an IRA or depending on their age that they can cash out. It's something of real value. So it augments just their salary and whatever bonus we might give them. They're actually earning as the agency grows. And it really is nice because we're able to truly have, 100 or so entrepreneurs working together. Everyone knows we have skin in the game.
So I know everybody has a ton of questions. I have a ton of questions, right?
I know. I just kind of gave you the whole
that's
shebang.
perfect.
So
no, that's fantastic. So a lot of agency owners are listening. They're going, okay, so if I give, like, I spent my entire life, let's say 10 years building this great company, working with all these people. I want to reward my employees. Like when I sold my agency, I had 10% dedicated to employees that they would benefit, right? So,
yep.
And that's what most people do, or maybe it's more, or maybe it's less. What was the benefit of those owners going, here, I'm going to give that to you? But it sounds like, and you tell me if I'm wrong, they got paid out.
Yeah, so ours was really complicated, and I'm really proud of how we managed it because, yes, our founder did get paid out, but we built the ESOP so that the equity that everyone had been earning over the last 7 years, the equity that John had been gifting the employees, was built into our ESOP. So you have a start point in the ESOP that has some value as soon as we start to pay down the debt we took to buy him out. And he did get paid out in two pieces. Part of it is a down payment and part of it is over time. And that's generally how ESOPs work, that there's a portion that's paid out over time because the founder wants to see the company continue to grow. And the more they have sort of oversight, John still sits as the chairman of our board. And the more that he has his hand in it, the more we're all going to grow and he's going to continue to benefit. So yes, the founder gets bought out, but I think in our instance, it was really unique because he got bought out, but we also recognized the value that he'd gifted over the number of years, which was a very complicated thing to do and involved all sorts of legal math that I can tell you about, but certainly not complete on my own. and a lot of lawyers and a lot of accountants, but we got there because it was really important to us to reflect what people had put into the beginning of this VEEP program.
So the owner gets paid out for their time and, a lump sum, and then also over time. And then do they get any residuals, or are they completely out?
So it depends on how you structure it. There are a number of ways you can structure it. An owner could do do the 100% of the buyout is done through a note that has an interest rate or participation in the ESOP themselves as part of their interest, because they generally give a lower interest rate than a bank would. They can do it kind of the way we did with a down payment and a note, or they can do it completely funded by an outside source. And it really is what the owner wants. We very much wanted our founder to stay involved. Our founder also wanted to stay involved. He's not in the day-to-day business anymore, but he's very much involved in the business. He sits as chairman of the board. He's I won't say daily, but certainly frequent advisor to me. And that has real value to us. So we created a system by which he can participate, not just in receiving his note and the interest that is associated with that, but also reflecting his contribution to the growth of the agency as it grows. So there's a lot of different ways that you can structure it.
Yeah. And so the agency took out, or as the employees, or was it the agency, or was it the employees at the time that took out the note?
Well, technically it's a trust, because what happens is you set up a trust, the trust buys the agency, and then the trust allocates shares of that to the employees. And the reason it's done that way is so that you have the board of directors is one governing, they govern operationally, but the trustee and the trustee committee, in our case, you can have either a single trustee or a trustee committee. We have a trustee committee, oversees the board in a way, because while they're not consumed with the operations, they are making sure that the decisions that are made going forward are made in the best interest of the employees.
That's so, I don't know why we've never had anybody on the show to talk about this, because it is very unique, right? Because,
well, here's the other benefit.
Yeah.
And this is the big one, right? Because the government wants you to be creating wealth for the many versus the few, an ESOP operates as a tax-free organization. So we still have to grow significantly, but we get to hold more money in the business tax-free, and because it grows and that values everyone. Now, the trade-off for that is that their shares are tied into, as I said, a qualified retirement plan. So either you roll them into another thing when you leave, an IRA or something that you already have, or you take a penalty if you take them out before you're 59 and a half, or you just wait and don't touch it to 59 and a half. Either way, there are some ties to it, but the benefit that the company has is that you get to operate tax-free.
What requirements, or how do you need to be set up so people don't take advantage? Like, I could just see some people trying to take advantage of the government or take advantage of this.
Yeah.
Like, how many?
Well, it's not easy. I will say it's not easy to do.
How many employees do you need for this to happen? Is there?
I don't know the answer to that. I think it's kind of any size.
Okay.
I think it can be as small as you want or as large as you want. We're just under 100 ourselves.
Okay.
I think it's not an easy thing to do. First of all, you have to kind of buy in a little bit to the idea of corporate socialism. And by that, I mean, you have to philosophically understand that you want everyone to benefit, as opposed to just a founder and a small executive team. And certainly not benefit equally, but benefit in an equally fair manner. So based on their contribution and their compensation, it's all set what everyone gets. There's no discretion in there. And that is important, because I think a lot of people aren't willing to do that. We very much were. I think a lot of people get nervous around ESOPs because you have to, first of all, you're generally, not always, but generally you're taking on debt to buy out the founder of some sort. And you have to pay the debt, and you have to pay it all the time and first. The debt gets paid first before even the founder's note. And that's also, the government makes sure that you're repaying that. The other thing is you have to hold a certain amount of cash in your reserves for when people redeem. Because when someone comes to me and says, I'm leaving the agency in 3 years, they've vested, they have their shares, and I need to exchange those shares for cash that then gets rolled into whatever IRA they want outside of the agency. We set our ESOP up so that you can't hold ESOP shares if you're not an employee. And that's an important piece for us because we want to benefit the people who are building it at the time. But that means we have to be ready to buy people out when they leave. And so that's another burden. And so you have these two big constraints that you have to put money into before you do other things. And I think that scares a lot of people. So
What
it's not an easy thing.
are you guys constantly doing valuations to figure out what you pay people? Like,
Well, it's very new. So as I said, we started Veep 7 years ago, and then just this year's made the transition to an ESOP. But yes, we had to do a valuation to determine the initial structure, and then every year the trustee committee will commission an outside third-party valuation, and that will determine the value of the shares that get allocated for that season. And I will say we're very used to that anyway. I know we're a smaller agency, but we've operated with a very high level of professionalism, and we've always done outside valuations anyway, not only because we had a small group of outside investors, but because we felt like it was a really important thing to get a handle on. And so it was part of our valuation, outside audit, all of those things were done just to keep us in check.
and when people are hired, are they vested right away or is it over time?
No, if you were part of our initial Veep program, your Veep options are the equivalent of your Veep options are vested because you've already been here. But anyone who starts in our ESOP has a 3-year vesting period.
Okay. Is that built over time or they have to make 3 years or is it a percentage up?
No, it's just 3 years, and then they
100%.
are fully vested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
And I have a question on the downside. Let's say you're not able, like someone converts to this and they're not able to pay the note. What happens? Does everything just
it
crumble?
kind of blows up.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of blows up. I mean, it's not without its risks, of course,
Yeah.
but I think it's built in a way that if you maintain a good culture and an engaged employee base, then they're invested in making it succeed. And we've always had an exceptional culture. We value that kind of above all else. As I said, we like to have a lot of fun. We like to care about our people. And I think it makes a difference because if you have an engaged associate base, then they're all working hard. The thing about having 100 or so entrepreneurs working together is if they don't care at all, and it's just a job, well, they're not really entrepreneurs then, but then it could fall apart. But if they really understand that the success of the agency is their personal success, then the odds are it's not going to. And it takes work, but we're really and I will say we've had this think like an owner mentality for the past 7 years as we participated in our bespoke program. And I think you can see the difference. You can see in good times and in bad how we make decisions, and it's generally with the best interest of our employees and to maintain our independence and our culture and make sure that we like coming to work every day.
I love it. Is there, I mean, this is a really interesting conversation and I really never even thought about that as an option, as an exit, right? For an agency owner.
Yeah.
But like you said, with every advantage, there is a disadvantage and you just got to figure out what works. But I totally agree
And where
with
you
you.
sit
It's
on the
like,
spectrum. Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree with you. Is the more that an employee is vested in their decisions, right? I mean, that's a big challenge that a lot of CEOs and agency owners have is how do I make my team make the right decisions? Well, it first starts with
Right.
you figuring out this is the direction we're going. This is why we're going at it. And then you guys are the who. You guys figure out the how and the what. And it just makes it a lot easier because they have ownership. They physically have ownership in it.
Yeah. And I think, the world has changed a lot in the last couple of years. I don't need to tell you that. And when you look at an industry like ours, where it saddens me how much people are unhappy in their agencies. They don't trust their leadership. They feel like they're overworked. They're burnt out. They don't enjoy the work. They are at the behest of clients. They don't feel taken care of and they don't feel invested. And that was before the pandemic. And now with the pandemic and the great resignation, it's that much worse, right? And so if our industry kind of stunk at making people happy in the first place, we're now the bottom of the barrel. And so we've always been counter to that. We've always invested in our people and our culture and our happiness factor, because we think creativity comes from happiness, right? Well, now it's even more relevant that we've provided people an opportunity to come effectively work for themselves. Because now in 2022, the world is saying, what do I want? And how do I want to be compensated? And, I know if I turn it on and I'm enthusiastic and I'm going to benefit, then I'm more engaged overall. So, that's just sort of a general, I think, moment in time that this is a right thing for us to do. But I think the opportunity, it's always really worked well for us in recruiting and getting talent. And now we've actually formalized it where I mentioned we have a board of directors and we have a trustee committee. We've also introduced an associates panel. So they're called VN Voices. And there are 7 people who have volunteered to be the voice of the associates. So they're not a governing body much, but they definitely, they are meant to raise issues and bring them to the board and the trustees so that people feel like they're heard and decisions aren't just flowing from the top down, but they're flowing sideways and from the bottom up. Oh, Jason, I lost you for a second. I can't hear you.
Oh, I hit
Oh,
the
there you
mute. It was a rookie move.
I was like, wait, is it my machine?
It's a rookie
It's
move.
2022, Jason.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're muted, dummy. That's really what it comes down to.
I didn't even think it was that. See, this is how much respect for you. I did not think that was the situation. I was like, something's wrong with my machine.
No, it's totally me. It was totally me. Sometimes when I hit this little button on the Stream Deck, it doesn't unmute me. But I was like, oh, damn it. But oh well. What I really love, what I was saying, I was giving away $1 billion idea. I was just teasing everybody about it.
Ah.
So I'm sorry, I was muted. I forgot it. I Frank the Tanked it. So, but what I was going to say is I really love the tax benefit, the organization, because my gosh, you spend all year in your agency building revenue, building wealth in the agency, and then you are just slapped for having all this cash that you need. And like literally, I remember, especially when we were only just a couple million at the time, I remember we'd have like maybe 500,000 in. And I was like, that's not fair. The owners get taxed on that 500K. We're not using it because we need that to pay payroll the next month. And then it only gets worse the bigger you get. Like when you have millions of dollars in the bank to do payroll and then you get taxed, oh, it's just a kick.
Well, and I mean, yeah. And did you operate as an LLC?
An LLC.
So that's a very common challenge. And honestly, I mean, imagine how many, no wonder we needed the payroll relief loans, because that's exactly where a lot of small businesses were in that position. They were sitting there and they just spent the money on taxes, not 2 months before, 3 months before. And then bam, along comes a pandemic and they don't have the cash reserves. And it's a problem. I will say we've been an LLC until recently. We converted to an S corp, but we've operated as a corporation. And the difference being that the company paid taxes, or we were structured so it looked like the company was paying taxes, even though technically as an LLC the owner was paying them. But I think that is, a challenge that some people have when they go to ESOP is they're not used to having a big nut that they have to put aside from the rest of the operating expenses, in whether it's taxes, or now that we're in ESOP, we're not paying taxes, but we have to pay, we have to pay our note and we have to pay our debt. So once that's done, then the tax benefit really becomes real. But of course that takes some time to do as well.
And when you say you have to hold a big nut, on cash, is that like a year's amount of expenses, or?
I don't, I don't want to really give an answer to that because I'm not sure I'm the best equipped to. My CFO would probably give a much more conservative answer than I would, which is why he's the CFO. But I think we have to be conscious of having enough to pay our loan and our note for 3 to 6 months. We need to make sure we have some redemption cash, even though there are some mechanisms by which you can redeem over a period of time and stuff. But we want to be truthful that you own shares, you get to redeem them. So we have to hold that cash. And and then just whatever else we would normally want to hold that we've kind of been exiting out of at the end of the year in our previous structure. Now we have an opportunity to hold that. So
Great.
I don't know if that equates to
That's
a
a
year
great
of
answer.
expenses, but it certainly gives you what you're thinking about.
Yeah, it's a great answer. I always tell agency owners, like, if you're looking at like a red light, yellow light, green light, like under a month is a red light in operating expenses,
Yeah.
if every right. Yellow light was 2 months, green anything over 3 months. And some agency owners, based on their risk tolerance, want 6 months. Some want a year, which I think is
Yeah.
actually too much because that means you're not really investing. But like when you have a certain structure, like what you were telling us, like people can redeem at any time, you do have to have a
You
lot
have to
more
be thoughtful.
cash.
But I think you're right. You also need to be able to invest in your business because think about how much the world has changed just even in the last couple of years. I mean, we weren't talking about hiring creators. We weren't talking about bringing them on staff or building relationships with them 4 years ago. They were this thing that hung out in the universe. And now that's a new discipline within the organization. I mean, not to say that everyone's not a creator, um, and analytics has blown up. And as we look at, what we had to buy for programmatic, and now is there a way to unwind some of that? So there's just so many shifts in our business so frequently that you have to be able to invest in being agile with those shifts.
Yeah. It's crazy. I'm glad the world changes, and then I'm also, pissed off the world changes at the same time. Right? Like
Yeah.
it's just
Sometimes I
it's a
wonder if that's just
balance.
being my age.
I I do
But
think it.
yeah.
I do. Yeah, I do become the cranky old man. I do come the cranky old man, and you became a cranky old person when you look at your children and you go, "Oh my God, you're wearing socks with sandals. What are you doing?" Like that.
Yeah. Well, I can't say I've gotten there, but I do often have to remind ourselves we have 10 principles that we live up to at the agency, and we really hold them dear. And the first one is be curious. And sometimes when I'm being resistant, I have to remind myself, nope, whatever it is, be curious, and I'm sure something interesting will come out of it.
Well, this has all been amazing, Leanne. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the listeners listening in?
Um, you know, I think there's one thing that I didn't share, but I think it's important is if you're thinking about something like this as a future for your organization, I really think you have to have a culture that is in place. You can't just kind of create it on top of it. VIA's always had a really great culture where we, as I said, invest in fun and in people and in happiness, and we care a lot about our people and their families and where they sit in the world. We invest a ton in mental health. We do a lot. Everyone does, but we're doing a lot with EDI and making sure that we're creating. First, we call it EDI, I should say, because we're trying to create an equitable environment first, and then introduce diversity into that. But equity is something that everybody needs to be thinking about. And there's a lot sort of written about our culture and these fun things we do called go do's that are meant to shake people up and get them out of their comfort zone. They're very fun, but they're also very strategic. And I think if you are thinking about what your future is, think about your people first. And no matter where you land, whether you sell to a holding company or you go ESOP or you sell to private equity or you pass it down to the next generation, you're passing something that's more complete if you really invest in the culture.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. That's been amazing. What's the agency website people can go and check you guys out?
It's theviaagency.com.
Awesome. Well, everybody go check out the agency, and thanks so much, Leanne, for coming on the show. It's been amazing insights. And for all the agency owners listening, if you feel that you are owned by your agency, which a lot of us do, right? And you really want to own your agency and then maybe create the employee owned, you have to get control. If you want help with that, and you want to be around other amazing agency owners where we can see the things you might not be able to see. We can have a lot of fun. You can share the different strategies that are working. We'd love for all of you to go check out Digital Agency Elite. This is our exclusive mastermind for agency owners, well over the million mark. Go check out digitalagencyelite.com. And until next time, have a swank day.